Hey everyone, I am back one more time, and I'm gonna keep trying to give this video thing another shot. I posted my first video about getting laid off, and I'll be honest, I got way more attention than I expected, especially on like LinkedIn, and it was kind of cool to see. Not like I got like 10 subscribers on YouTube and whatever. And again, my goal is not to do that. Just kind of fun to make content, and if it helps people and they care about it, that's good for me. So today I'm gonna try again. This time I'm using OBS on my Mac to record versus the QuickTime. So still feeling this out. There's definitely gonna be a very poor transition to when I shrink my video up for what I'm gonna talk about. But nonetheless, like I said, just want to kind of keep trying and go from there. I'm not a professional. In fact, my camera's shaking. I can see it. Now I got to fix that in Premiere and After Effects. One of my favorite. Um, so here's my idea. I was thinking about this series that Jason Lengstorf came out with, where he brings on like or three devs, and they all have to build the same application. So like, hey, here's the product, and then I think they also align. They align around the technology. So like recently, I think they had to do a multiplayer game, and everyone had to use Party Kit, which was really cool. And so, as I've been looking at like different content and content creators, some are more unique and different and interesting. Like I think Jason's series, first time I've seen something like that I'm aware of. I really like it. Others are, not always as tactical or driven to give what I consider enough value. And sometimes people just like watching stuff, and that's totally cool. But I wanted to do something more tactical. And so my idea is kind of similar to Jason's, but a different approach, different angle, and not building code is I'm gonna bring up my screen, and there's this Reddit that I found recently, or last couple of years, called ExperiencedDevs, and it's what it sounds like, where people that have questions or situations they've run into, and they're looking for experienced engineers or leaders, managers to provide input, feedback, advice, and the questions are really interesting. And some folk give a lot of good context, not always. But what I was thinking was, for something I want to start doing is my Reddit Chronicles, and I need to come up with a cooler name, is go through a few questions and answer from my perspective and experience kind of what I think, is a way to consider approach or think about things. And, if this, is well received, even though, again, I don't have a ton of people looking at my stuff right now, which is fine. I'm thinking maybe I could do something similar where I bring on some developers and leaders, or even maybe product or something, and they can also kind of reflect and provide, their input and opinion on, these different situations and what they would do. So I feel like I haven't really seen this. I think it's kind of interesting. I'm gonna flip over. This is where that first poor transition is gonna come in, but I'm okay with it. So, so let's flip that guy on so you get to see me twice now, just once. So I got the Reddit up here, and again, if you haven't been in it, so it's r/experienced devs. Like I said, it's really cool. I like the situations that come up in here, and I enjoy giving perspective, because I do think that there's not enough leadership management content out there, especially in the tech space. There is some folks that are doing some really great stuff, like Kelly Vaughn, Sarah Dresner, to name a couple. And there is many, but it's just not nearly the same as the saturation of how much coding stuff there is. So I feel like this hopefully brings something a little more unique to the table, and that others enjoy it. It also helps me going through these situations. I'm trying to grow my skill set, and I know others want to do that, especially if you're newer to leadership. So I do hope you find it helpful. I'm gonna pick like 2-3 questions as I scroll through, read them, look at the context they provide, because context can make a huge difference on the direction something goes, and just talk about how I would do it, how I'd approach it from a problem solving perspective, from an experience perspective. May not be perfect, and I'm sure others have different approaches and opinions, but that's kind of the other side is if you have feedback and it's like, no, I would definitely not do that. I'm happy to have a healthy debate anytime. So, all right, let's hop in. And so, let's see. How should I express to my manager I need to coast? Okay, that's an interesting one, but a little too niche for me. I have thoughts, but I'm going to keep going. All right. How to handle people who don't take criticism well in code reviews. Okay, that could be good. Let me, maybe we'll do that one. Years of knowledge. Is this a thing? How do you answer execs with AI? I don't want to get into AI right now. Interviewing for an up level in a senior role. Maybe we should probably read that one and see. All right, let's keep going. How to make a career change? Maybe. Dying project? Not feeling those as much right now. Decrease code review quality during crunch time. This is a good one. This happens a lot. Meeting with the CTO after a month at a new gig. So skip level? Okay. Why don't we start with those four, and maybe I'll just answer a couple to keep the video short for today. Plus, I got to edit it, which, man, if you've never done video editing or special effects, oh my God, is it time consuming. All right. So, oh, look at this awkward bar. Come on, that's not mobile friendly. Reddit. All right. Anyways, so I think I got it zoomed in pretty good here so we can read it. So the question is how to handle people who don't take criticism well in code reviews. Tale as old as time if you work in engineering. So let's give this a read. So I have a member of my team responds quite harshly to comments they receive in code reviews. I want to foster an environment where people feel they can be completely honest with their criticism and concerns within my team. One employee said it feels like they receive a comment back that it's like arguing with someone on Reddit. That's kind of funny between like how people are on Reddit and how they are on Hacker News in the comments. It's funny to see. So I don't want to tackle it too strong initially, but what kind of strategies can I take as it make that employee that it's ultimately with the goal of improving code quality and sharing knowledge? Okay, so this is interesting. This is, like I said, not a uncommon thing to run into. And I have a few thoughts, and I also see some stuff they themselves have in there so that I think is valid and a good way to think about it. This definitely, I'm going to take a wild guess. This is definitely an engineer. I don't think this is a manager in this case. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So they respond quite harshly to comments they receive in code reviews. Okay, so here's the first thing I would say. So I'm already like intro and retrospective about myself. So if I was in their position first, before I jump to anything around this person, even if there's like feedback all around or many people bring this up or feel this way, I'm first going to be like, okay, if I'm writing a code review or doing like a verbal out loud or a paired programming, I need to make sure like, how am I saying it? Again, even if there's valid criticism or feedback for that person, is how am I writing my comments? How am I projecting that message? What's the inflection that I'm writing in? And now, again, if you're typing inflections, not a thing, but is how am I putting these things together to state the feedback? Am I writing it in a bad way? Am I writing it in not a helpful way? Like maybe it's their response style to the way I'm writing it needs to be looked at, right? I noticed in pull request reviews when it's, you just write comments, I do think people can be a bit dry sometimes, and other times people are dry, but then they're very rigid and harsh in the way they say it, even if they're not trying to be. And you got to remember how much communication gets lost when you're talking over instant messenger or comments and everything, right? That's one thing with text messages too. If you ever send a text and it is not perceived well, but you realize that it gets lost in translation because it's just a text message, not an out loud thing, right? We don't have necessarily the body language. We don't have the verbal part of it, right? So I definitely would look internal at myself first. Now, if we take that aside, because again, it sounds like this is something that's a little bit more widespread than just one person to one person. Now, they don't feel like they can be completely honest with their criticism and concerns. Now, before we get to like the actual person, this is interesting, and this is something I picked up. So when I was at DocuSign, I came into a team that wasn't doing super hot, really great people, and it was not a safe space. I know, hopefully that doesn't make people are okay with me saying that word, but it's true. It was not a comfortable environment for people to speak up and put themselves out there because they would receive harsh feedback, or, some really smart engineer, which they are, would not know how to really communicate well, and also to take feedback in and not see it as my way or the highway, or you don't know, or just by the way they communicate, even if they are very unaware of how they communicate, that people don't feel comfortable. And you got to think, especially if you're lesser experienced or even just lesser experienced than that person, you're not going to say anything, right? Like you don't feel safe putting yourself out there, and that's not the environment you want. Now, in order to get around that and build that environment, this does come back to the individuals, but you have to think as leaders and managers and as engineers, especially if you're a higher level engineer, because you have more explicit and implicit responsibilities, is why is this not the environment we crafted? Do we not care about this? Do we not aware of it? Do we need to just expose it to ourselves? And, this is where things like retro and just having open conversations and one-on-ones comes up. But we do really need to take that into account. It sucks when you don't feel like you can put yourself out there. In fact, there's two versions of it. There's, I feel like I'm going to get criticized and beaten down. And then the other side is like people don't want to speak up because it's like, well, hey, they're more experienced than me, so I can just agree with them, right? But we should be speaking up as engineers, even if you have lesser experience. It doesn't mean that you can't bring opinions and thoughts to the table. Maybe you don't have as much of the experience to back it up, but problem solving doesn't mean you always have to have all of those things at once to be effective and provide answers or input onto things. So never forget that. And again, if you're scared or intimidated as a newer engineer, again, just you're less experienced than someone else, you do need to figure out is like, how do I get myself out of the comfort zone to put myself out there? Now, this is all kind of under the assumption we have a better environment, but I was that annoying kid with his hand up all the time. And I'm sure I've said a lot of stupid stuff, asked stupid questions, but I know that by putting myself out there and giving my advice and as I build my experience that I've added value to, the team, the products and everything that we're building. Okay, so we talked about those two. So now let's focus on the one. And I can already realize I think I'm just going to do this one question because I have so many thoughts nested inside of this one. So let's think about the actual person. Now, I will say if you're in management or leadership and this is known to you or or should be known to you, this is one of the things if you're in leadership especially, like you need to be picking up on these things because these are detrimental. These are negative effects that hurt the team significantly. And if you are not on top of those and realize it's going on or also getting others to pick up on those things and have that awareness, you're going to find you're going to have a lot of issues on your team and it will fall apart or people are just going to suffer and they're not going to be happy working on what they're working on. You definitely do not want to run into that. So I would say first is if I'm aware of this or I've built my awareness for this as a manager or leader, and same with the more senior engineers, I would say I need to go and have a one-on-one conversation about this. And, sometimes in the beginning, it's just having a light conversation where it's like, hey, I know could I share feedback with you? I always like to ask the question. No one ever really ever says no unless maybe they just don't want it or not a good day to have it. But I always ask is like, hey, can I give you feedback first, right? And once you do that and you get that yes and you open people up to it, things are a little easier from a conversation standpoint, or they can be. Now, what I would say is you got to come in with some examples and be like, hey, listen, I was, in the code review or the PR with these comments and this and that, or, I was in the room when you guys did that, or I heard you pair programming, and I got to be completely honest with you and transparent. It's just like, you can come off a bit harsh, like the way that you project and communicate to them. And usually when I do something like that, like assuming I gave some like specific examples, I then need to pause, and this will be the same if you're an engineer, it doesn't need just a manager. Let them respond to it. See if they have that awareness. See how they respond. They might not even respond well to that, but you have to at least get that conversation out there in order to ever start that conversation. Now, if they're like, like, hey, that's not my intention, or they get very defensive, it's like, no, I don't do that. And it's like, well, that's the whole reason you give the feedback. So if you are in the management leadership side, especially, like, you do need to be like, hey, this is the feedback, this is what's going on, here's how it's negatively, or it's how it's impacting the team. And like, also too is like, hey, but listen, you're a great engineer. This just comes down to those professional skills or those communication skills. And if you work on those and grow, like, you are going to rocket ship even more than, you have been because you've been a great engineer on the team. And, you got to look for understanding and see if they start to respond to that. Now, if you start to go down the path of things aren't changing, and I've had this many engineers, unfortunately, a lot of engineers don't have the greatest communication skills, is it becomes more stern as you go on. It's like, hey, this is not getting better. This needs to change. You are, you are having XYZ impact, and people don't feel good about this. Like, we can't keep having this conversation because as a leader, I need you to have those professional skills to drive the team forward, to take the feedback, to give feedback, but do it in the right ways that helps us move forward, right? Like, if you've ever seen on Netflix's culture page for like jobs, they say like they'll happily never hire a Steve Jobs, even if you're the best tech or best engineer in the world, because we want people that we want to work with. And these are the other half of those skills outside technical that you need to have. And if you're not that, you really want to be someone that people don't like to work with, or be unaware that people don't like to work with you or don't enjoy it. Not a good feeling, especially once you figure it out or find out from someone. But hopefully, you have the self-awareness where you don't have to get it from someone like me. Now, last thing is, if you're on the engineer side though, I realize that this can be harder, especially if you're a lesser experienced or not the same level as them, which is, personally for me, I am willing to have these conversations. I've done it many times, even when I was newer. And when I was a junior, it was a lot more intimidating. Or I'm sorry, I hate the word junior. It was a lot more intimidating when I was newer because of exactly what I said, where I don't have all that experience. But what I do have is, hey, this is how this made me feel. Could we talk about this? When you put yourself as how it makes you feel, like a lot of people see vulnerability as weakness, complete opposite. Hill I'll die on all day. Vulnerability is a good thing. Vulnerability, honesty, transparency, huge values of mine. When you're willing to do that and let people know, like, hey, this hurts. Like I mean, even from just a professional angle, hurting is like, this isn't fun. Like, I don't feel like I'm learning. Like, you're a very smart engineer and I want to learn from you, but the way that these are communicated to me, like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like it's the best form of communication. And then also too, if you really want to, take the hard push is like, just so you know, I'm not the only one that feels this way. Just be completely honest. And what I want to do is, like, I want to work with you and figure out how we can, improve this. Like, what are your thoughts? And you stop there again. Now, again, I realize that conversation can be very intimidating. So that's why I say is if you're in the management leadership side or more senior roles, like, you really have to be the sword bearers of a lot of this, because the only way that you ever signal that these things are okay is by beating the leaders that go and make these things, go this way, or improving your own skill set, or having self-awareness for the team or yourself or whatever it is. Now, I think there's a lot more nuance in here, and I want to hit on the last thing, and I'm not sure what I'm at recording wise. Let's see, 16 minutes. Oh well, I'm gonna have to cut this one up. Last thing is, they put in here the goal of improving code quality and sharing knowledge. So what's interesting, that's why I said at the beginning why this is great, is this is a way that you put not leverage, emphasis behind why we do those things, or hey, this is the culture of our team, or this is the importance and value of it. When you start to do that, that becomes a great sales pitch. And if they don't understand that, listen, if you get into the hard spot where it's not improving, maybe a manager that doesn't realize this is going on, it's time to go talk to someone. You need to go talk to your manager or to another experienced dev and have these conversations and figure out, like, your manager should be your ultimate shield in person. If you can't move this forward, it's part of our job. But there is some times where it goes down to that level of impact that you do need to bring someone in. But the biggest things is like I said, build those skills to put yourself out there and have those conversations, but learn to do it in the right way. And if you're a manager, God, please keep an eye on your team for this stuff. It only takes, like I said, a couple of negative things, and this is one example that will severely impact your team. So this took a little bit longer than I realized for a question, so I'm going to just do the one here. So I'm curious what people think, Twitter, YouTube, comments, whatever. Let me know. I'd love feedback if you think this is interesting. There's an insane amount of questions on here, and we only got through one. But if people find this helpful, then I'll work on being more succinct. Like I said, I'm still figuring out the whole video thing. I'm happy to keep doing it. I may just do it because I enjoy doing it. I thought about a lot from my own skills and growth perspective as I was going through this. So again, hope you found it helpful. Looking forward to doing more of these. And like I said, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.